Hello, let's continue on with our critique here for the second project. Again, looking at shutter speeds. This image is, just static. Looks, I'm guessing a flash went off here, so there's no movement, and it's, exposure is a little underexposed. I'd say the ceiling's supposed to be white, and so there's an exposure issue. It's just also, I don't know, very bland and not all that engaging of a composition for me. Subject matter is pretty banal. I don't know. This image becomes a little bit certainly more interesting. The shutter speed, I would say, definitely adds another visual dimension here. I become more engaged with the shadow. We get this very strong radial feel, concentric. Light's a little overblown and overexposed. It's difficult to balance in a lighting situation like this. I wouldn't think it's the greatest photograph, but it's certainly a lot more interesting than this. And I think this really can illustrate how simple changing a shutter speed can make a very non-interesting image, at least, wow, kind of interesting and different, and makes us see the world in a different way. The other thing of note, I think, on this is a technical thing, is the white balance. Probably could be manipulated, and to get a more truer color, we have this very orange, warm light coming from this bulb. So if we were to change it to a tungsten setting on the camera, or maybe even auto white balance, you'd probably get a more true color. All right. The painting with light I find pretty interesting. I like the light is visually, radially strong, concentric, kind of directs me visually. It doesn't have as much symbolic meaning as I could maybe think to push. But what I find most interesting with this is the play between that light and then the environment. We have the person here, we have an environment, background, and I like the push-pull of these two things. I do think we need, it's a little dark, and yes, it was probably dark when they took the photograph, but I think exposure a little bit, or a little bit more contrast, or just manipulating this a little bit further could help the image and make it a little bit more interesting. See, in the grayscale version, I think ultimately I would like the color version the best, but I like that I'm getting more details out of here. I like that the garage or whatever this is, the side of the structure, is a little bit lighter. Get a little more texture out of the individual, but I really prefer the color lights in the previous composition. So. All right, so the last photograph we have here, shutter speeds, I don't know, it doesn't appear to be a major player in the image. It probably definitely is a player because we get the sharper image, we get the bubbles and whatnot. But I really like this photograph. I just like how the lines of the individuals, and the lines in the image, the horizontal lines, vertical lines, kind of diagonalish lines. I find this really a sort of intriguing photograph. Most pool pictures are like, hey, people in a pool, whatever. But this one, I think, just compositionally, and the fact of how these two are mimicking each other, has a lot more content and interest for me as a viewer. All right, let us move along here. We shall look at Lisa's images. I like this panning photograph. I like how the background is fuzzy and blurry, and the figure is very sharp. That really helps me put an emphasis on him. I also like the diagonal lines, this diagonal line in the image, the focus on the individual, the action is communicated well. I think it's a pretty good panning photograph. Now, sometimes when we look at these photographs, they're like good technically, good compositionally. Not really sure where they are artistically, You know, I look back at this image and I'm not sure artistically, do I see it as art? I'm not sure. I like the photograph, that's for sure. And that's, you know, something we can debate or talk about and think about. This image, I think I like the blurs. I like how we have this horizontal blurring. It gives me a sense of motion, feel. I like, though, that I have like a sharpness of the face. You know, there's just this little bit of sharpness, and that helps me with the image. I also kind of like how the background also implies motion, dancing, or something along that lines to me. Maybe I'm wrong. And then the juxtaposition of these images. Yeah, so, all right. This image is just, I really wish the figure was just a little bit sharper. I know that'd be a real challenge. I look at this image, I'm like, I don't know how many you probably took trying to get this image. But I love this floating. I mean, the figure is so horizontal to the ground, and then the arms hanging down. And man, if I could get a little bit of the face just sharp and crisp, I really love the blurry background. You know, the car just kind of blurs out, the streets blurred out, even like the whites here just kind of are stark and blown out, but it doesn't bother me at all. I like how that simplifies and abstracts it, and this focus on this horizontal figure just is really interesting. If we could just get a little bit more sharpness in here, I'd be like really engaged with this photograph. I am fairly engaged with it already, but I think it would just be a little bit better if this was sharper. Now, one thing that we can do with this, you know, this is panning, and panning can be difficult. It's difficult to follow those objects at that speed. But an image like this, I'd be really tempted to force that on-camera flash to go off as you're panning, because then you could get this you know, the face or parts of that object that you're panning with much sharper. It depends on your flash and your camera and your skill to do that and all that. But that can be another thing that can be opened up. I was just, you know, really engaged with this image. I like the dog too. He's you know, pretty good panning image. I'm much more engaged with the flying human, but this one's pretty good too. I like the simplicity of the composition, I guess, overall. You know, whereas this one I'm not near, you know, the panning is, I think, it's just not as engaging. Plus the subject is just doing, you know, something just kind of everyday, you know, here where we have this extraordinary event here kind of, and it really adds and ups the level of the interest, to me anyways. This painting with light, there are lots of them here, and I found this one most engaging. You know, this one kind of like doesn't have what I like a lot, which is that interaction between the light and an environment or an object or a figure or something like that. But I really am engaged with this, and I like the color palette, and it really doesn't bother me that I don't get this engagement with reality, because these light forms are so sharp and crisp and abstracts, and I'm not quite sure what they're supposed to be, but there's such a consistency among them that it really piques my interest and curiosity as to what they're trying to communicate. And I like how we have this yellow, and then it bleeds out to this very desaturated red, almost red-violet color around there. And I do get a little bit of sense like I'm seeing a glass or something here, maybe the edge of a table, and there's just enough of other objects here where it engages me and keeps me interested and intrigued with this image. So this is one that you know, it feels more like a collage than a photograph. And I really like the feel and the ambiguity, I guess, of the image too. You know, a lot of these painting with light ones end up very ambiguous, but they don't often, or all of them, engage me as to thinking about what it is. I'm like, hey, look at the light swirling. This one doesn't make me say that. It makes me really curious as to what's going on and what's creating these shapes, how they're created, what they are, what they're symbolic of, or you know, whatever it is they're created with. So, all right, there are some of my thoughts. Let's move along and take a look at Mandy's images. And yes, this is I really love the layering of this image. It is just fascinating. Then the figure, the human figure back there, very suggestive, and then the reflection of this, and the reflection of this other light, and the rectangles and the rectangles and the rectangles and human form in there. It's a really, I just find an extremely engaging image. You know, grabs my curiosity. Love the colors and the play. So I think it's a really effective image. I'm not sure what it has to do with shutter speed, other than it probably was long shutter speed being taken at night. But it's a really engaging image and photograph. I like this one too. I really like the low perspective, and there was a color version. I think a lot of these, man, you had both color and black and white versions, and this one I think worked in both. The color one wasn't necessarily really stronger than the other, so I just grabbed the black and white one. I think there's nice mood. I like the low perspective, the figure at the door. You know, I think it's a good photograph. There are quite a few of these. Here's another one. This one I think was much better in color than grayscale, from what I recall. Sometimes images just don't lend themselves to grayscale, and vice versa. Sometimes images are much better in grayscale. Now, painting with light. This is one that, like, I think there's something interesting going on. I don't think we fully brought it all together in the photograph, in my opinion. I know one person, I think maybe is Drew, faved this one, and might be curious to get some insight from him as what really engages him. There are some really engaging things about the light, though, and one of them is the space that's created, and that can be kind of tricky, and I don't often see that with the painting, because I like how this color goes through this, and this goes back and out, and we get this push and play and foreground, middle ground, background. I just wish I had a little bit more something going on back here that would inform me or engage me or force a relationship between this thing, because it is actually really an interesting, engaging form, but it's all I got, and after a while I'm just like, okay, I can't really read it or whatever, and I like the form, I like the play, I think that's good, but I want it interacting with something else, in my opinion. I like this image too. I like the action of it. I love all this stuff. There's, it's a really visually dense image. A lot of stuff going on here. And then we have the figure here throwing up. It looks like they're throwing up something there, probably a pizza, since I see pizza behind them. That was my initial thought too. But I was like, why am I thinking about that? But I look at it, yeah, there are pizzas here. I don't know. I think the shutter speed adds a really nice dimension to this. The slower, longer shutter speed works well. Same with this one. I'd want just a little bit more sharpness up here, and it could really be effective and interesting. But I really like the motion, I want a simple, everyday sort of scene, but the slow shutter speed really transforms it and engages me with the image. So, all right, we'll move along here again and work through this. All right, so this, I think, becomes one of those typical painting with light images. Well, maybe there's something figurative here. Now I'm looking at it. There might be more to it. At first, I just thought it was light, but now I'm almost seeing a torso or something here. That becomes more interesting and engaging. I think I'd like just a little bit more, a little bit longer exposure, more details. I don't know. The light is kind of fuzzy and blurry and mixes together, and we get the blue and the reds and the greens. But it might be interesting if we can get something sharper, but I want something sharper. Either bring out a little bit more of the figurative and allow that to be seen a little bit more, or give me some more sharper lines and let that figure fall back and be more. It might be nice if we had just a little bit more light over here, or something along that lines. But there's something, there's the start of something here, and I think we're getting somewhere interesting with this process and this photograph. I don't think we've quite made it all the way. I do really like this image. I love the different textures, and I like the feet. So I really like how I can see, like, there's a sharpness to the feet, but you can also see this blurriness from the feet too. And then this diagonal line moving through it in the carpet and the wood. And then the other diagonals going this way from the movement of the feet, and how the legs become these really almost like triangular forms here. I think this is a pretty interesting photograph. It really engages me. All right, so we have the two dog ones here. We have the color version. We have the grayscale version. I'm not sure I'm I think maybe I like the grayscale a little bit better. You know what it is? I really like the grayscale. I like the texture of the nose and the mouth area here. I think but the background is just nothing in this photograph. It doesn't add too much to me. In this one, the textures are less pronounced, but the background seems a bit more interesting and playful within the image. Maybe what I really need to think happens with this image is to crop it. And with this one, I want to just like crop that bottom quarter off or something like that. Maybe even third off. I think that would be helpful. I think ultimately, though, I like it more in black and white. And I think with it, I want to crop out everything. I want to get rid of all this stuff over here. I just want that. And I suppose I'm in preview. I can probably play with that, cropping a little bit. And I think this is more interesting. Maybe I need it even tighter. I don't like all this black at the bottom. I don't think that's helping. So we'll crop it even tighter. And I think that's more engaging. I like the textures better. I don't know. Maybe it's not great yet either. I don't know. Somewhere in there are some interesting things. It needs to be pushed, I think, ultimately pull it all out. The last photograph is probably the least interesting of these images. So yeah, I've been panning semi-successful, but I'm not really engaged with whatever else all is going on in the photograph. So yeah, but okay. So we do have some other really good images. So all right, shutter speed, good. Moving along. This is painting with light, and then there was another version of it here. Forgive me, here. So I see this photograph just looks underexposed, and there's something interesting certainly with the child and what they're doing. This stuff's like way underexposed, and I want more. I want more information or something going on here. But I think when we put the painting with light, this is really nice. Really like how they accentuated all these lines and shapes in the photograph and the figure here. And I love that we get that little bit of real skin sort of texture in the image. The whole image almost feels drawn. But then we get that little bit of real texture and flowers and humans and a little bit of grass. And, if you look in the darks, there are probably even some, details there we can see. I think this is a really nice integration of the painting with light with this environment. And I just find a really engaging photograph. This one I like too. I want a little bit more, I think, contrast in it, or lightness or darkness. I love how they become shadows. There's like this intimate thing playing out here, but they're like shadows on this orange peel wall. And I don't know. Maybe it's fine just as it is. Maybe it's a good low contrast, dark sort of image. I kind of go back and forth. Sometimes I want a little bit more. Sometimes I like it. I can just see it big, like a really big photograph of this thing. It's a very engaging image, as is this one. Thinking about panning. Yeah, this is just, it's like a bizarro world, black hole sort of thing, just this rotation. I love how these feet are just so static and sharp, and then the whole world is kind of concentric around the feet. It's, I think, just a really, really nicely constructed photograph in this portfolio. So, and this is also nice. There's a color version, black and white version. I thought both were good. I kind of like the black and white one. Very nice nighttime shot. So, long exposure, water, all those good recipes. Good elements for a recipe of photograph. I could maybe see cutting off the top a little bit. I don't know, getting rid of some of this gray. But anyways, nice image, nice body of work there. So, good job, Sarah. All right, and I think this is the last one we have here. Let's take a look at these. All right, so this image is, all right. It kind of gets the panning thing. It's kind of curious, a little bit of a narrative. Where is she going? What is she doing? Or maybe just mom makes her walking back and forth while she pans. But no, I think it engages a little bit of a story and narrative. But I don't know. this thing seems like not one great photograph in and of itself. It seems like it could be a really effective part of a larger body of work. And so that's sometimes how photographs work. I always emphasize with my students a photograph body of work. Always at least 10 images. Usually, typical professional world, 20 photographs, all revolving around the same concept or idea. And sometimes when you're working within that structure, not every photograph is great, but sometimes photographs just play a role. This one I think could very effectively play a role in a larger narrative. The photograph singularly in and of itself, is not great, but it certainly has potential to become part of something great. This image is, what is more banal and everyday than laundry? And I find nothing dramatic or intense going on, nothing about shutter speed that really transforms the image. But at the same time, I do find a curiosity with this image. I just like, and it seems very almost mundane, contemporary, postmodernish photograph. There's just I like the lace curtains and a little bit I see outside, and the washer and how it falls off, almost vignetted back here. This darkness area here, balanced by another darkness. And these lights balanced in the light. It has a good compositional feel, but at the same time, just very everyday objects. But there's something in this photograph that engages me beyond that. I wouldn't call it a great modernist composition or photograph, but I can certainly see it playing a role in our more postmodern, more contemporary art photography world. Something in here that makes me think. With this painting with light, it just seems more just about light streaks, and it doesn't, for me, go beyond that. Bringing in something more in the background or whatever it is. So yeah, it's all right. It's painting with light, but I think it needs to be pushed. I do like this image. I like the sharpness of the piano, and we get that sense of that motion and the movement of the fingers, and I like the slight diagonal that we have in the composition. So I like the composition. I like, shutter speed is definitely being effectively used here. Using that slower shutter speed works out pretty well. So I think in the end, this is a very good, engaging photograph. All right, so I believe, yes, that we've covered everyone. If I missed you, please let me know, and I will get another critique of that up. But I think I've got everyone, and let me know if you have any return thoughts on that. $8.28.